Hi there and welcome. This is Doug Diamond, owner of Diamond Disc Audio and Diamond Digital Media, based in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to work on L.A. Marzulli's latest film, UFO Disclosure number 6. So it's number 6 in the series. It's called Cattle Mutilations, and what I thought I would do is show you my audio mixing and mastering process that I use when a film like this is handed off to me. So let's jump right into the editing program. This is what I use, and I'm currently utilizing Sony Vegas, which is a really good multi-track video editing and mixing, audio mixing platform. Been using it for many years, and I just enjoy the way that it works, and I know a lot of the functionality part of it. So that's one reason I've chosen this versus Final Cut or some of the other well-known video editing platforms. So we're going to be using this, and then also SoundForge, which is another Sony product. Sony has sold SoundForge and Vegas now. A different company owns those. But my versions of these actually are the Sony versions. I feel like the newer versions of these programs are a little buggier, so I kind of stuck with the Sony versions. So anyway, let's jump right into it without wasting any time here. I know LA is definitely waiting for this project, so I want to get this done and send it to him. So what he sends me, as far as when he delivers files to me, is the two tracks you see on the top here that are switched on. These other ones that are darkened out are muted, so we can see them, but we are not going to hear them right now. So this is the audio mix that goes with this main video track. So when I play this back, you'll be able to hear it. Just know that the audio mix that we're hearing is actually LA's rough mix. So it's what he sent me when he sent the files to me. He sent me a video that had his audio mix in it, and then all of the individual tracks separately of the dialogue. This is just the speaking and the music, as well as the sound effects. So everything's separate. And they're separate so I can control the different volumes between the different tracks, so that hopefully one thing isn't too loud versus something else, if that makes sense. So we're going to try and mix it, which means balance it out as good as possible. But before we can do that, we're going to do some cleanup. So that's where I'm starting in this process. So this is again, this is the rough mix that we're looking at, and I don't really need it other than for a reference. So if I have any questions, I can always go back to LA's rough mix of the recording. But in this case, I'm going to mute his rough mix and just work with the individual tracks that he sent me. So we're going to start with the dialogue, because if you know what you're looking at here, this is the audio waveform. You can see perhaps that there are some issues with the audio. So I can tell right away that I'm going to need to do some further work on the audio to get it up to where it needs to be and sounding as good as it possibly can. Because a lot of times, you know, when you're on set, when you're recording things, it's hard to get all the different shots and hard to get, you know, a perfect microphone experience where you're capturing the audio exactly as you want it to be. You almost never get a studio type situation when you're on location recording things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take his audio and clean it up as good as it can possibly be, and probably run some denoising and things like that if we need to. So, and I've had to do that on previous projects, so I'm only guessing that I'll need to do that as well on here. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this program in SoundForge, this audio track. So let's jump over to SoundForge. SoundForge is an audio-only editor. It doesn't edit video necessarily. It's really just for editing audio and mastering audio, if you will. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be in here kind of cleaning things up, and I'm probably ultimately going to remove a few of the wait times where the computer is processing audio, just because I don't want you guys to have to wait through everything that I'm waiting through to get through this. So hopefully in the end, the final video that I hand off to LA, hopefully it'll be a little bit shorter than the version that was recorded in real time with me working on the project, if that makes sense. So if it takes from 0 to 100% to process something, I might kind of skip past some of that just to save you guys some time. So that's what I'll try and do. We'll see how it goes. My computer's doing a lot of things here. It's basically doing a recording that's at full 1080p with camera and audio, in addition to running the actual editing programs and doing that processing too. So I'm doing a lot of things all here at one time. So just so you guys know. All right, so here we go. So let's work on the audio. I'm going to start with first just checking some places. You'll hear me jumping around, and that is totally normal. I'm just going to try and see what I'm dealing with. And the main thing I'm going to want to do is I can tell by looking at some of his audio, it's pretty hot, meaning it is really loud in places.
And I'm like going, and of course I'm just like not trying to, be afraid, because they can pick up on that. It's interesting.
So I can tell that I can probably back some of that off. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a normalized process on this, which may or may not bring it down from where it is. Let's see what happens. Okay, normalize is done, and it didn't really change anything, which is sort of what I figured would happen. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a plug-in here that I like to use that's called Declipper, and I'm going to run this Declipper on this so that hopefully it will bring down some of these peaks that are really loud.
And because the rancher's fine.
Yeah, nothing's happening to him.
Nothing's happening to him. But
so what I want to do is highlight this whole thing again, and I'm going to run this Declipper on it. This is a setting that I use that I typically will have really good success with. So let's see what happens. Okay, I ran the audio clipper, and you can see that many of the peaks were restored on the original audio, which will make it sound less crunchy, less hot.
Have to know that there could be a virus, a viral thing.
All right, so what we're going to do is, you can see that you may have noticed when I played that, it's only in the right channel, because we want it to be in quasi-mono or in both channels. In other words, we don't want it to only be in the right channel. And most of the rest of the audio, as you can see, is in both channels.
So obviously, well, not obviously.
But this down here is also only in the right channel.
And I think it's part to create this artificial moon for the...
So what we're going to need to do is isolate these sections by using markers so that I can get in here and fix the sections that are right channel only.
Mutilations. So I'm here with Chuck Sikowski.
So I'm going to put in some markers here just to kind of marker it off and give myself
topic.
Some guidelines to go by here. So that those two markers marks the beginning and ending of this section. I'm going to do the same thing down here.
Cows, decades ago.
So here is where it jumps to right channel only. I'm going to put a marker there. And another one down here.
These guys.
And you might notice the this big long gap of space here between where this talking finishes.
I don't like these guys.
And where the next talking picks up.
Before I get into the rap here,
which is 13 seconds. Well, why is that blank? It's because we're only looking at the audio, or the audio of the dialogue track. So we're only looking at the dialogue track right now. We're not looking at the music track. There's probably music in there. So we'll get to that. But just know that's what's going on. All right, so this section right here I've isolated.
So I'm here with Chuck.
One channel only. It's only in the right channel. I'm going to use this process called channel converter, stereo to stereo. We want to use the right channel only. So I've got this plug-in on SoundForge, and I'm going to run this. And there, it's done. You can see that it is duplicated using the right channel information. It is throwing that into the left channel now as well.
A few times a year. The ranchers every day.
So now we're good, and we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to do channel converter using the right channel only. Okay.
grants.
Yeah, the worker bees, and they're very automaton-like.
Now, let me throw this to you.
Now, as I go through the, obviously the dialogue's really the most important aspect of the audio. The music and sound effects are icing on the cake, very important stuff as well to create feeling and emotion and mood and all of that. But it's the dialogue that tells the story. So obviously we want to try and make the dialogue sound as good as we possibly can. So that will be my goal here today. Now, the way he exported his tracks from his editor, for some reason there is a music section here at the beginning of the dialogue track. But that's okay.
Chuck Zukowski.
What we'll do is we'll marker that off so that I can isolate that later if we need to.
Of cattle mutilations.
So what I'm
So I'm
doing
here with
is
Chuck.
just going through and making sure
On his ranch, and it was Chuck who introduced.
that nothing else is really jumping out at me as far as, is there any other music sections anywhere?
About 3
Probably
or 4
isn't.
in the morning. Went into the hospital.
Well, there's a little bit
No
of music
heartbeat.
mixed in right there.
Ultrasound. No baby.
I'm not really sure what happened there when he exported the tracks. It's possible that it was already blended in somehow.
Her eyes shape-shifted. The whites went to a golden color with black streaks, and her pupils
60-degree view of the San Luis Valley was created by Judy Messeline in May 2000. Ordinary amount of time, characters, and of course that doesn't happen.
Case that was in the newspaper in 1896, but it's just a round ground oppression.
About,
For the most part, it seems like it's okay.
folks, cattle mutilations
the-
continue.
As far as not having
Is used in
too much other music mixed into it, so that's good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to isolate some other sections of this dialogue, and I'm going to go through and normalize all those pieces, and then I'm going to run some other processes on the audio to help kind of clean them up and add some compression and things like that will bring them up and make them a little bit easier to hear as far as what's going on. So let's start with that.
Chuck Zukowski is the living world of cattle mutilations.
So if you follow or drained of blood first.
You didn't have.
her eyes shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me.
They've been in communication with these entities for centuries.
As you can see, some of the audio is really low level. We're going to fix all that. So even though we have really loud audio down here,
Have to know that they're
down here we have pretty quiet audio.
Have you talked to them? Oh no, we stay away from.
So obviously that's going to need to be fixed as good as I can do it anyway. I just normalize that section. What it's doing is it's looking for the hottest or loudest peak, loudest spike in the audio, and then it's going to set that at digital 0. In this case of this section, it's just this piece right here that I have highlighted.
And
That hits right at digital 0. You'll see that on the meter up above.
And
Right here. I have it set to minus 0.1, which that's basically digital 0.
and
But that's okay. These other sections I have markered off
Because he didn't want anybody
are
knowing
way
what
less. They're
happened.
down at minus 26.
But
So that's a pretty
she
huge
told me that
volume difference. So I'm going to normalize this section now too, just to kind of get it in the ballpark. We're going to run some other processes on it though to help clean it up further.
To morph into other.
Okay, that's a little bit louder, and we're going to do this piece as well.
Laugh at that. Some of you will laugh at that.
Okay.
Here's what I want to get into.
Now, another thing that I like to do is kind of giving away some of the secrets that I use here, but I think that's fine. I've been producing podcasts, which are primarily dialogue only, for many years. So I have a process here that I use that really helps with balancing out the audio in general of just spoken word type things. We're not talking music here. We're just talking dialogue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this plugin in SoundForge called a wave hammer, and I've got a couple of different wave hammers that I like to use here. So watch what happens when this is completed. This is basically a type of compression. Okay, so there's the first wave hammer pass, and note that I had to leave the music part out. I don't want to over compress the music. It will pretty much ruin a music track, but what we're doing here on dialogue works extremely well, because again, experience will tell you that. You really need to know the limitations of your software and your plugins, things like that. So, but we're definitely still in the safe zone here. We're gonna leave the music out and run a couple more compressor passes and see what we get. Okay, there's our compression passes done. So now I'm going to go through and listen to those sections in particular that already had a little bit of music mixed into them and see if they're now greatly exaggerated or if they can remain as they are. So I'm going to check a few things here.
Professional. Chuck brings a very unique perspective to our
Cow mutilations in California. An investigator to use an EMF mutations. That's why I picked him, because
So they drain the blood first.
yeah, nothing cauterized.
that'll-
No cauterization at all.
Tom Miller has been ranching all of his life.
Mutilated, no blood,
No blood at all.
no blood. The ones I've seen is, maybe it is.
Shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me. That
Okay, this piece right here has some music in it.
When I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me. That was my reaction. And I said, what the heck was that? And she gave me the most
Messaline in May 2000 to capitalize on headlines when it happened decades ago.
Sense to anybody.
So Tom,
I'm going to put a marker in here because I'm going to have to recompress this little space here. I can tell by looking at it that it's not quite as loud as I would like it to be.
found
Narrowing out, that narrowing out, and then
That part's okay. So let's do a little more compression here on this piece. Okay.
I mean, it's just, it's a debunker or a skeptic mind looking for some sort of natural explanation.
Obviously that's in a different location, so it's got more room, reverb, more echo in it.
Say this. There was a woman who lived south of Blanca, and she called me one day, and she said, I just want you.
I may need to run, I have a whole other different program that will let me de-reverb or de-echo audio, and I may run that here in a little bit, just on that piece, just on this section here where it's recorded elsewhere. We'll see.
Who have claimed to be in underground bases, deep military. No, I mean, they've been in communication.
The first thing they say is, well, it's our military.
No, it's
oh, it's
not.
this or that.
That she was hoping that there would be.
In fact, anybody can look at this.
You can see it's a lot more uniform as far as the overall volume goes now, though. It's a lot closer to where I want it to be ultimately. Looking at this first piece with the music, I haven't done anything to this yet other than normalized it, which just brings this peak right here up to digital 0. So what we're going to do is I'm going to compress it a little, but we probably don't really need a whole lot here. Let's see what this looks like. I definitely do not want to compress it as much as I did in dialogue. Music is a lot less forgiving. Dialogue you can pretty much compress and compress and compress, and for the most part, if you have a good plug-in, good software, you can get away with that. And you do want that unless it's bringing out problems that you need to fix later, which sometimes that happens, because it brings up the noise floor the more you compress things. Because what you're doing is you're taking a dynamic range. Dynamic range just means from soft to loud, and you're squashing that down. And when you do that, it brings the noise floor up. So if you have a noisy recording, the noise is going to get louder the more you compress things. So you just have to be careful. You got to know what you're doing.
He thought about it, and he said about an 8. And I truly believe that the material taken.
So, okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the way the compression and the overall volumes of the dialogue track are at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean up any little audio anomalies, like abrupt spots where there are edits, and you can usually hear those things. So let's work on that.
Chuck Zukowski is a professional investigator of cattle mutilations. So I'm here with...
You can see what we're dealing with here. This bit of audio here is where the edit kicks in.
So I'm here with...
Now, what I don't want to do is delete anything. You cannot delete anything because if you do and you take your audio track and put it back in with the picture, it's going to be out of sync. So it will be in sync up to the point where you've cut something out, and then it will be out of sync from there on forever for the rest of the film. So you can't delete things, but you can mute things. We have to keep the timing intact. So I'm going to mute that and do a little fade out here.
Troubling world of cattle mutilations.
Okay, there's still a little bit of just the way he's speaking right there. I'm going to try and bring that down a little bit more, just a little fade.
Of cattle mutilations. So I'm here with...
Now this, we have an edit spot, and then where he picks up talking about something else.
So I'm here with Chuck Zukowski.
I'm going to mute a little bit more of that and fade this up, kind of clean it up a little.
So I'm here with Chuck Zukowski in his inner sanctum, which is just incredible.
Again, we have an edit spot here. I'm going to fade this out and just clean it up a little.
So I'm here with Chuck Zukowski in his inner sanctum, which is just incredible.
What you're seeing here is the reason it looks so much louder now. It's not. I'm just zoomed in. See the zoom level here? I'm just zoomed in here so I can see what I'm doing. So that's what's going on. So now I'm going to just kind of skip through.
Just like, I had no idea this was going on. You live in Colorado, which is...
The people that are in tune to their environment. Oh, they're...
What I'm looking for are any other rough spots there where it's transitioning from one scene to another scene, cutting from one place to another.
That opens it up to a whole different topic.
So here's a little spot right there that I can fade. Why do I fade it? Because it gives it a little smooth edge to it.
That opens it up to a whole different topic. Tom Miller.
You can see there's where he cut it. There's a little bit of a... That's the breath, but it's actually a little bit cut. So I'm going to do a little cleanup fade there.
Tom Miller has been ranching all of his life. Tom Miller has been ranching all of his life.
I'm going to undo that. I think I'm going to just mute that right there. See what that sounds like. The nice thing about working with an audio editor like this, as you guys know, I'm sure, working with computers in general, is you can undo things if you don't like them. So that's always a good thing.
Tom Miller has been ranching all...
I just removed that out of there. I felt like that's a little cleaner.
Tom Miller has been ranching all of his life on 1,400 acres in a remote area of Colorado. Tom has lost 16 cattle to the mutilation phenomenon. Chuck Zukowski has investigated for decades, but then
here we have something I can tell by the thickness here in the baseline area of the audio. So something happens here. Let's see what it is. I don't know if it's noise or if it's music.
times, and she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old, and I'm living in it. I got pregnant.
So this is music right here, obviously. So that's from a different film. So we can't really remove the music. I could lessen it. I have a plugin that lets me minimize the music, but I don't want to do that because he's taken the time to edit out a specific section of a different film and use it in this area. So I don't want to mess with the music. I don't want to remove it.
That was the first time that happened. Over the 5 or 6 years that I lived in that place, that happened.
To create an artificial womb for the hybrids, for the
Maybe it is possible. I don't know.
Wow.
When I pushed her back,
So this piece has also got some music in it.
ever heard, and I got the heck out of there.
All right, that's fairly abrupt, but it is faded.
I got the heck out of there.
All right, pretty big breath on the lead end to this section, so I'm going to fade it and smooth it out a little.
Judy Messalon is the owner and curator of UFO Watchtower, which is an observation platform in Colorado.
So you can see there's some mouth noises right there. You can probably lose that. So I'm going to just kind of clean this up a little. Mute that and fade this out.
For Colorado.
Yeah, this might seem really tedious, but this is the job of an audio mixing engineer. You know, you're just going through and cleaning all these little things up.
The Watchtower, which has a 360-degree view when it happened decades ago.
So everything is a little bit better than it was.
Decades ago.
Or sometimes a lot better than it was. So this is another abrupt cut right there, and so there's a little bit of noise. We're going to keep the noise and just fade it in. I think we need it because I think it's just part of the room noise, or breath as well.
So tell us the backstory here. What's with this horse?
She was discovered in 1967. The woman who owned
Entities for centuries.
I would add too that I haven't watched this film yet. I'm gonna do the work here. I kind of know his the way he works. So
For centuries.
I'm going to watch the film when I'm completely finished with it, just so I know everything's working well together. It says centuries.
Centuries.
I don't want. I felt like when I faded the S, it was a little too long.
Centuries.
That's better.
So we were talking.
All right, so we got more noise here. I'm gonna get rid of that. Again, we're muting things, not deleting them. You can't delete them.
So we were talking about bovine blood. The fact that
If this was an audio-only podcast and no picture was with it, yeah, you could delete it all day long because you're not syncing back to picture. If you're syncing back to picture, though, you cannot delete it. Otherwise, it's going to throw your audio-video sync off.
Looks like it's been dropped. Okay. So I'm getting a little.
So that one's got a little bit of noise in this section, but
Okay, I got to introduce an EMF.
it's not terrible. I probably will try and denoise it and lessen it a little bit.
Person that's gonna love
But I'm going to have to isolate it because there's music in this piece.
because they're
I don't want to mess up the music.
You to make humans from cows. Decades ago.
This is one of those sections where I had to duplicate the right channel to the left.
From cows. Decades ago.
You can hear it here where it kind of switches. So I'm going to mute this. Cows. I'm going to fade this out.
From cows. Decades ago.
And I'm going to fade this up a little bit.
Make humans from cows. Decades ago, we were using bovine hemoglobin for reversal fertilization, and that's with the technology we had decades ago.
yeah.
Like these guys? Like these guys?
Before I
So we're nearing the end of the main cleanup on the dialogue track here.
get into the wrap here, I just want to tell you.
I tend to work really fast, so I'm sorry if I'm doing things where you're not really understanding how I'm doing so quickly. I'm using my left hand with keyboard shortcuts while I'm using my wheel mouse and right hand to do the clicking and mouse aspect of it.
Thanks so much for watching.
All right, so we're going to mute that, and we're going to fade this out a little.
Thanks so much for watching.
All right, and then just checking the end of the audio here. If I zoom up, see there's more noise right here. I don't know what that is or what it's from, but all I have to do is highlight it and mute it just to get rid of it because we don't need it in the mix for sure. All right, so I feel like we're in pretty good shape on the dialogue track, so I'm going to save this so that I don't lose my work. And I didn't actually mention it before, but these are 48K 16-bit files. Okay, I've got it saved, so I'm going to close this, and we're going to go back to Vegas. Not the town, but the program. Okay, we're back in Vegas, and the nice thing about these two programs, one of the many things I like about them is that they talk to each other really well. I as soon as I closed it in SoundForge and went back to Vegas, I didn't have to change anything. It literally just built a whole new image and audio peak file here. That's what the purple is that we're looking at. It just recreated the audio peaks, and now we're looking at the this purple here is the newly mastered audio that I just worked on. That's cleaned up. So and again, I'm probably not done with it. I may have to go back and denoise a little section there. I think it was over in here, and we'll come back and take a look at that in a little bit. But for now, let's work on the sound effects. So I'm going to unmute this, right click and do open in SoundForge. Okay, now we're in SoundForge, and we have just the sound effects, and you can see what those are like. There's one of them. This first one is pretty loud. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to also run this same declipper. Okay, there is our audio declipper that we've run on the sound effects track. Now, the next thing is, let's go ahead and normalize the whole thing. Okay, let's check that first one that was so loud before. It looks like the peaks have been restored on that. Yeah. Now, after I ran the audio declipper, it lowered the volume of the whole thing overall. So what I want to do is I'm going to use my compressor once or twice on this and bring the whole thing up a little bit more now. So you might say, well, why did you lower the volume only to raise the volume? Well, I was declipping the overloaded audio first, so repairing the audio, and then after I repaired the audio, now I want to bring the volume up where it should be. Okay, so there's a couple of compression passes done. Let's check the beginnings and endings of these sound effects and make sure that nothing is cropped or cut off at all. Some whooshes. These should all be the same. I just want to make sure nothing is cropped off, cut off, or everything should be nice and smooth. Some typing. Might seem really strange hearing only the sound effects and no dialogue, but this is part of the filmmaking process. That must be words going on the screen, I suppose. again, I like to work fast, so. Typically on previous films, I think the typewriter effect and these whooshes are new. I don't think he's used those before. He was using a different one for quite a while. So he must have decided to change it up. He meaning LA, because LA sends me the files. He's the director of the film. Okay, there's that particular whoosh is one of the more standard ones that we've used throughout the series. And again, you know, you can't delete any of this space in here. There's a lot of space between these sound effects. 5 minutes, but you can't delete it because as soon as you do, it's not going to be, you know, these sound effects from here on through the rest of the film will be out of sync. They would happen sooner if you deleted all this blank space. Does that make sense? So those are two, for whatever reason, whooshes that are quieter. I'm not sure why, but obviously he did that for a reason. So we'll figure that out when we get there. You know, you can't really tell until you have the visual to go with it. We're nearing the end of the whooshes. And the last one. So yeah, everything looks clean. I'm going to zoom up just to make sure that I'm not seeing any noise anywhere, and I don't. So that's good news. So let's save this and go back to Vegas. Alright, we're back in Vegas and we have the sound effects track unmuted and back in here. You can see that it's a cleaned up version. I'm going to mute them for now. I'll mute that and the dialogue. And let's work on the music track. Alright, so the music track, obviously he's got some things mixed pretty low in volume. But that's okay. We're going to still bring things up because I can adjust the volume a little bit later on. I don't have to worry too much about the volume in this particular step. So first I want to hear why this piano down here is so much louder and see if it needs to be declipped. Yeah, you can almost hear it distorted right there. So what I want to do is I'm going to run my declipper on this as well and then bring the volumes up just like we did on the other stuff. Okay, so there it is declipped, and these peaks should be restored now. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. See, it's restored it back to the way it should be. I think that's good. Let me see what this last thing is. Synth pad. So what I want to do is I'm going to put a marker in here. And another one here at the beginning. I think this piano here is where the credits in the film is. The credits at the end of the film. Alright, so I'm going to normalize. Just bringing that peak up to 0. I'm going to normalize this one too. I know it's way louder, but that's okay. Now the other thing I wanted to do is check this spike. I don't know what this is. It's almost like part of a sound effect. So what I want to do is bring this whole thing up so we can hear it a little bit better. What I don't want to do is go in and adjust individual pieces of the music unless there's some need to. If he asks me to, if LA were to ask me to bring something up, I could. But otherwise, the relative volumes from scene to scene are pretty much set. What I'm doing is affecting the entire thing, and then I will sit that in the mix with the dialogue and the sound effects so that nothing really stands out. It's going to be an overall adjustment for the way he's mixed the audio, or the way he's mixed the music from a relative standpoint. So here it is. Yeah, it's just that one note. It's almost like a part of a sound effect itself. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to do a couple of minor compression passes on the music just to kind of balance things out a little bit more. Okay, so there's the first compression pass. Let me see what that sounds like. Some of them are they're mixed pretty low, and they're just a tone or a pad. Like that, which that's pretty quiet in the mix versus some of these others. LA did all the music, by the way, as far as I know. He usually does. Okay, so there's our music. Let's see what it sounds like. Looking for anything that sounds like it's abrupt or cut off. Okay, that's a little weird. Not sure what's going on there. Yeah, that I don't know. I'm gonna have to probably hear that and see it with the picture and see what's going on there, because it's a 3226. I'll have to remember that. It sounds a little odd. Not sure what's going on there. But we'll check in a minute. There's that hit. Overall, it's looking pretty good. I don't really see too many issues here with the music, just that one thing. Everything seems pretty smooth. Okay, that kind of cuts off a little. So I'm going to give that a short little fade. Just so you kind of get rid of that little click at the end of it. Now, let's see. I did not use the compressor on these last two. Probably don't really need to on this, but this one I'm going to use the compressor on just a little bit. Yeah, that's probably good. Now, the end here. We have kind of a fade in here, I think. I'm going to fade that and fade this. Okay. Now, when I'm adjusting it in Vegas later, I can isolate just this part in Vegas and bring that up or down. It wouldn't need to go up, but bring it down if I need to. The piano should be about right. Again, that's the end credits part. The rest of it is the music for the rest of the film. So let's save it. And we'll go back to Vegas. Okay, so there's our music track and our effects track below that and our dialogue track right here. So there's everything in there pretty much cleaned up and ready to go. Before I get too far along though, I want to check that music spot. I think I said 3226, so let's take a look at this and see what's going on with that. Let me mute these effects and dialogue tracks just for a minute. Okay. Okay, in the context of everything, I think it might be okay.
You talk to a woman that's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times. And she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old, and I'm living.
Okay.
Through it, not once, but 3 different times. And she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old.
All right. Well, I may do some creative copying and pasting because I feel like there's still a little bit of a hole right there where he finishes talking and before this next girl starts talking.
Woman that's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times. And she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old.
I feel like from about here to here, I need more music.
But 3 different times. And she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. But 3 different.
So I think what I'll do is I will find a good spot here. It's just a like an arpeggio kind of thing, synthesizer. So what I can do here is I'm gonna cut this from there to about here. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to insert an audio track, and I'm going to I need it to work rhythmically and kind of fill up that space a little bit. Let's check it and see if this works. So now we've got the sound effects back in, the dialogue back in. Let me just hear it.
For decades. But then when you sit and you talk to a woman that's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times, and she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
That might work. Let me hear it without the sound effect.
She's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times, and she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20.
Yeah. So that's all we did. We just extended that piece of music for a couple of bars, and that should pretty much fill that little hole there. So that's good.
Pregnancy. Now we've heard this, I've heard this as a researcher for decades. But then when you sit and you talk to a woman that's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times, and she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old.
Yeah, I think that works. All right, good. And notice that even though we changed the structure of the music track, it didn't affect how long it is. It still ends with all the others. Speaking of which, here is the piece at the end with that synth pad. His original has it pretty low, so I'm gonna just kind of make this into its own little object and drop the volume down a little bit. Let's see what that's like. Fade out here. Might need to have it a little bit longer. Something like that. Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna minimize this original audio track. I don't really need it. It's the original audio that went with his video. So this is this thin one right here that I just minimized is LA's original rough mix. So I'm gonna leave it on here, but I'm gonna minimize it just so it's not taking up screen space here. Okay, so let's see. Let's go down to here.
Chuck Zukowski is a professional investigator and has been delving into the cattle mutilation phenomenon for decades. Chuck was kind enough to give us video clips of his field work and our first watcher's film.
Incredible.
My first question.
California, it just, there weren't any. And pretty much that I could get to because I lived in Huntington Beach. But the reason why I research and
now what I'm looking at is just overall balance from the standpoint of the dialogue, which has to be front and center, to the music and the sound effects as well.
You may go down their path and you're going to hit a dead end.
Okay, so the first thing I notice is I'm hitting the red over here on my master meters because I have everything blended in together. So all I have to do is back this down a little bit. For now, we'll fix that later.
There's no hemorrhaging, meaning there would be blood.
A whole different topic.
And the other one was laying right next to it, but its back was broke. It was still alive.
And again, you can isolate things just by themselves and turn off the music and the sound effects.
And the other one was laying right next to it,
Just hearing the dialogue.
but its back was broke. It was still alive, but its back.
I can get rid of this track, by the way. I was just using it to put that little insert that measure to a music.
And the other one was laying right next to it.
Here it is with the music and the sound effects.
And the other one was laying right next to it, but its back was broke. It was still. Yeah, I think you're right. They can do what they want, and seems like there's no stopping it.
Is there a nefarious? Now we've heard this, I've heard this as a researcher for decades, but then when you sit and you talk to a woman that's actually gone through it, not once, but 3 different times, and she's been abducted and taken since she was 6 years old. How old are you then?
I'm 20 years old. It's 5 or 6 years that I lived in that place that happened twice again.
Is it possible that the mutilations, because if they take the child...
When I pushed her back, when she went to kiss me, I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted. The whites went to a golden color with black streaks, and her pupils shrunk. I upset her, and that's what happened. And I got the heck out of there.
United States and international media coverage. Judy is also the... About a month ago, a UFO was just hovering right there. So they know. I mean, they've been in communication with these entities for centuries. So we were talking about bovine blood, the fact.
Okay, so now we're just going to kind of scroll through the whole thing and see if there's anything else that needs to be addressed. One of the things I wanted to look at was the section where he's talking to this lady, where there's a little bit of reverb in the room, a little bit of echo. So I wanted to hear if it's annoying, or if it's something that can be fixed, or if it is something that's best left alone. So
your thoughts when you hear that?
That could be. That very well could be. I haven't been taken yet.
And you don't want to be.
Yes, I do.
You can see that they're in kind of a concrete type of room.
People have talked about this. They're in a ship and they see these vials, these glass-like jars, and in it are the fetuses, which look more alien than human, which are growing. And I think that the mutilation...
I would lean toward leaving it, because if I make it sound too studio-like, it will seem less real. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We differ on that.
See. But who knows? Until one of them lands here and we can have a chat.
That's it right there.
That's the whole thing.
So, and that in communication with these entities for centuries. So
I think we're in pretty good shape. I think the piano at the end probably does kind of need to be a bit gentle, and it was really loud before, so I think we'll go with it where it is. And then this synth part here at the end doesn't need to be real loud either, really. So we'll just do a little clean up, fade out thing here. Although we're not really fading anything out, it's pretty much already gone. Okay. So at this point, what I would do is just an overall check and balance on the dialogue versus the sound effects versus the music, and seeing if anything needs to come up or down. Right now, just the basic setup that I've got, the dialogue is at 0, which means I'm not boosting or cutting the volume on that at all. It's strictly what I've output directly from SoundForge. The music, I've dropped it a dB overall, and the sound effects are up 2 dB overall. And the reason for that is this template that we're looking at here, the way things are set up, these were the volumes that I had more or less on the last film. So that's kind of where I'm starting with this film. Since I started this one, I think I dropped the sound effects down from 3 to 2. So instead of boosting 3 dB, I'm boosting 2 dB. But that's about all I've done with it, really. So I want to see how close that is as far as the mix goes with the sound effects and the music and everything.
Okay. I worked on a few of his mutilations, really scary stuff.
So in order to do this, the best thing for me to do is to really turn the volume up, and I don't want it to come back through the microphone, so I'm going to mute the microphone for just a little bit.
Okay. I worked on a few of his mutilations, really scary stuff, Manuel Sanchez, and he was really easy to work with. He was the first animal mutilation investigator to use an EMF meter. First one to use was the first. It's not that I don't think that she did a good job, it's because she out on the field where there's 50, 60 herd of cattle. I'm
It's like,
terrified.
oh yeah, they're big.
They're 1,100 pound animals.
Hello.
And I'm like going, and of course I'm just like not trying to, be afraid because they can pick up on that. It's interesting. Cows aren't as stupid as people think they are.
They're smart.
In the Trinidad area, San Luis Valley, knew of me. So I did a mutilation that his wife and his son had seen. That for a while there, his wife was afraid to go out at night.
Okay, I think it's sounding pretty good to me. I think what I want to do at this point is go ahead and export this thing or bounce it down to stereo. So what I'm going to do is combine everything, all audio tracks, we're going to combine it into a single audio track, a single stereo audio track. So we'll do that, and then we'll do some final mastering passes on just that. So we're going to render out a new 48K 16-bit audio file. Okay, now the next step is to take that final mixed wave file and do some final mastering passes on that. So let's go back to SoundForge. Okay, so you can kind of see that all of the boosting and volumes and stuff like that, it's a bit relative now that we've mixed it all together. So we have, once again, peaks and stuff again instead of it being kind of flat across the top. So we're going to do a little bit more compression, and that should about do it. First I'm going to normalize. Then we'll do a compression pass. Okay, so there's our final compression pass, just a before and after. There's before, there's after. Now we'll just do a couple little spot checks, and we should be good to drop it back in with the video and render it out. So let's see what we got.
Chuck brings a very unique perspective.
And you just can't come in and say, okay, what happened? You have to hide.
Okay, so at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I will drop it back in with the video and then do a final watch through of the video. Okay, we're dropping the mastered audio back in here. Now, two things you got to remember and do is go back and mute all of the original tracks and bring your master faders back up to 0, because now everything is in here in this one track right here, just this tan one here at the bottom. So we're ready for a final listen through on the full film. So let's do that, see what we get. Obviously I can't play the entire film while I'm doing that, so what I'm going to do is pause, watch the film, come back and finish up. Yeah, okay, so everything's looking good. The film looks and sounds fantastic. So the next thing I will do is render this out to a MP4 file and send it to LA for his approval. And then if anything needs to be changed, we'll go back and tweak those things at that point. But yeah, I invite you to watch the full film. You can get it at lamarzulli.net. So thanks for joining me today. You can find my mastering and mixing business at diamonddiscaudio.com. The link is in the upper left corner. And my news show that I do, it's a weekly news broadcast based on Christian principles, but in the context of the end times. And that is the Diamond Report, which is in the upper right corner up there. The diamond.report is where that is. That just takes you to my Rumble channel. I appreciate your subscribing. Thank you very much. And yeah, I do live broadcasts on the Diamond Report every Sunday night. And we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much.